This video covers everything you need to know about direction in Hearthstone Battlegrounds. I think this is the most important skill to master, a skill that if you don't have, you're going to constantly commit into a build too early, bait yourself into bad directions, or even be in a position where you just don't know what you're rolling for. Let's start this video with a quiz. Which of these cards do you think is directional? We have Hungry Snapjaw, Deflectobot, Scrap Scraper, Mithrax, and or Eternal Summoner. Which of these are directional? The correct answer is none of them. If anything surprised you, you're probably in the right place, and you'll learn in this video exactly when to commit to a direction and how you can tell whether a direction is going to be bait or not. I'll also try to give as general advice as possible, so this video will be useful regardless of what meta it is, and so you guys can excel when the minion pool gets reworked. Let's first talk about what enabling means, a term that is definitely not used enough. Enable is a term when you put yourself in a spot to go a certain direction. For example, Scrap Scraper, number 3 on the quiz, is not a direction by itself, but it's a really good enabler to go mechs if you find Beatboxer and or Jakari. Enabling a direction is crucial to building the actual composition, and I find that low MR players will most likely skip this step. To demonstrate why enabling is so important, let's suppose you tripled into a beatboxer. Scenario 1 is the case where you have a scrap scraper on board and it gave you an Accordatron. Then the beatboxer is great. It provides immediate value and immediate economy generation with the Accordatron, and it gives you a solid game plan as well, which is to go for Jakari and utility to close out your scaling. Having the Scrap Scraper on your board is what allowed you to pick up the Beatboxer and then go mechs. Scenario 2 is when you commit Beatboxer when you don't have the Scrap Scraper. What's going to end up most likely happening is that, at least in high MR, you need the Scrap Scraper for your magnetic generation, which is far from guaranteed that you roll into it. And then you have to wait 2 turns to get value out of the Scrap Scraper, so you'll probably be taking big damage because you're buying really expensive magnetics in the meantime just to get some beatboxer value, and your board just kinda overall sucks without the Scrap Scraper. I'm gonna give some more examples of committing to a direction without enabling it so that you guys can try to avoid this in your games. Let's say you level to 4 fast and you need to stabilize on Tavern 4 and your 4th shop has a Banana Slamma. Do you buy it? Unless you're Terran or Reno or something and you have a really good reason to play Beasts, no, you should most likely not buy it. You have not enabled Beasts and you are relying on rolling Slyraptor way too much than you should. The better scenario is that you should buy the Slyraptor first because it is a great tempo unit that also enables Beasts. And then, after you roll into the Slamma, now you have a reason to play the Beasts. See the difference? Let's do one more example with elementals. Let's say you tripled into Rock or Nomi for elemental scaling. To enable this scaling, you'd have to have picked up Recycling Wraith in the mid game to make cycling elementals way easier, or have a Gentle Genie on your board so that you can generate elementals and maybe randomly get a Recycling Wraith. If you have neither Genie nor Recycling Wraith, you have not enabled playing elementals and you should not think about going Rock or Nomi. I think you guys are starting to get the hang of it, so I want you guys to think about what enabling demons looks like. To answer this question, think about what would make you want to buy a Floating Watcher or a Malchazar on Tavern 4. If you answered Wrathweaver and Soulwinder, you'd be correct. Without either of these cards, it's a little hard to commit demons, but if you already have the Wrathweaver or Soulwinder early game, then buying these great Tavern 4 demons becomes infinitely easier because you have a head start on your scaling already and you don't have to waste a lot of time rolling for these 1-drops and 2-drops that you should already have. So we talked about the importance of enabling a direction before committing to it. Now we have to talk about how to avoid skipping the enabling step altogether and committing to a direction way too early. Hungry Snapjaw, a pretty good unit to buy with the Mana Saber opener, right? A terrible decision to commit to playing Beast when you buy it. Hungry Snapdraw is what I'd like to call a tempo stick. It allows you to win every early fight, but that's all it does. The benefit of winning all your early fights is so that you can level more aggressively and go to higher tavern tiers early on. If you're stuck on Tavern 4 the whole game, it's really hard to play some of those 6-drop comps, but Snapdraw may just allow you to level straight to 6 and start picking up those juicy 6-drops. It enables 6-drop directions, if you will. What would happen if you just forced Beast with the Hungry Snapdraw opener? Well, the main problem is that you're limiting your options way too much. It feels like kind of a waste to commit to one build when there's so many options in front of you. For example, you can easily pivot to Murlocs with a brand, or you can just play Phalanx comp if you find that. Second of all, you're making your game way too susceptible to bad rolls. How do you know that you'll find Banana Slamma and Sly Raptor every single game? Your average placement will go down so much because you're kind of forcing yourself to play like a solitaire style where you're just forcing one comp. Another great example of this is Briarback Boogie. Yes, a pair of Briarback Boogie is great to pick up. Yes, it's great to enable Cold Wars because you have the gem generation already and all you need is the Prickly Piper. And no, it's horrible to commit Cold Wars from this spot for the same reason that you don't commit Beasts when you have Hungry Snapdraw. There's a difference between forcing Cold Wars and leaning Cold Wars. Leaning Cold Wars and then committing Cold Wars once you have the Prickly Piper is far better than forcing Cold Wars from the get-go. I know what's on some of your guys' mind at this point. Hey, I've seen you force Mech Cold War before and now you're telling us to not force a comp? That's kind of hypocritical. Well, you're not wrong, but you're not right. The correct answer is it depends, but mostly you're wrong. With anomalies, there will be strategies that are so much better than every other strategy that it's just correct to force. In valuation inflation, staying on Tavern 3 and forcing Cold Wars is insanely consistent and the correct play most of the time. Keyword consistent. See, most of the time strategy forcing is not consistent. The only reason why forcing Cold Wars is possibly consistent is that A, it's Tavern special so the shop size is doubled, or B, it's valuation inflation and 1-drops are removed from the pool so it's so much likelier to roll into your key cards, and also all the higher Tavern tier scaling sucks. And if we're talking about your typical game of Battlegrounds, forcing a strategy will never be consistent. Well, unless you have infinite gold, but then you can just do whatever you want, so that doesn't really count. So the answer to your concern is, yes, I have forced a strategy from turn 1 before, but it is not to be done lightly, and you have to make sure that your strategy will consistently work before you try to pull it off. Another example of such a strategy is with Old Arana and Party Elemental Molten Rock, where people used to just stay on Tavern 2, cycling Elementals, refreshing anomalies with Party Elemental and Molten Rock, and that's their comp. And it's pretty consistent top 3, but it's not common that these strategies are in the game. The third topic of this video is how do you actually enable a direction? Let's say it's a meta where some tribe is extremely broken. Currently it's Phalanx, but sometimes it could be Banana Slamma, it could be Gusty Trumpeter, it definitely varies. So how could you actually put yourself in a position to play this comp? As we've already established, we're not forcing the direction, we're just leaning towards it by enabling it. Well, the answer is just buy good units that would be useful for your direction that you have in mind. Instead of buying Deflecto on Tavern 3, maybe buy that Wraith instead. Instead of buying that Jug in your shop, buy a Sly Raptor. Okay, Phalanx you can pretty much just have any board you want, so it doesn't really count. But yeah, be conscious of what's strong in the meta and value some cards more than others as a result. After Gusty Trumpeter was removed, we saw that Wraith was being picked a lot less. Was that because they nerfed Wraith? No, it wasn't. It was because they nerfed Elementals as a direction, which made you want to lean Elementals a lot less than you previously would. And that's why every single decision, even starting from turn 4, is so important. buying Slyraptor turn 7 could just be the difference maker that you end up with a solid beast build versus ending up with nothing. And that is an extremely important aspect I urge you all to think about. This begs the question, how can you tell whether your direction will be bait or not? And for that, I just want to shout out my comprehensive tribe tier list that I do every single meta, where I show you guys which directions are the best every single meta and how exactly to play all of them. I'm telling you guys this less to self-advertise and more to genuinely just help you improve and have a better understanding of which directions to go for every single meta, I promise. There's one final consideration that you guys have to make, and that's called pivoting. Just a disclaimer, I won't fault any of you guys for never pivoting once you've committed to a direction, but to play like extremely optimally at high MMR, you need to find spots where you can pivot into a better comp. Pirates are the most common comp to pivot out of right now. Because pirate scaling is not so great, but the infinite gold it provides allows you to find something better to do, which is currently Murlocs. It's not that bad to just play pirates the whole game just to not be confused, especially if you're newer to the game, but the more elite you get, the more you have to realize that pirate scaling just won't cut it at high MMR lobbies, and you're going to have to play Murlocs to win the game. And that's when you cut most of your pirates at some point and buy every single Murky, Murkai, base skill, and Murgle to make the Murloc pivot possible. This is an extremely common tactic currently actually. But remember to not go too crazy on the pivots because you should only make this transition if you're far enough ahead. Because if you're not in a great spot, you may just be griefing yourself by attempting to pivot because you're spending a lot of resources by holding these pivot pieces. Because this concept probably isn't too important to most of you, I'm not going to go that in depth about what are the best spots to transition, but just know that it's something you can try if you think you need it to win the game. I'm going to end this video off with what I think the roadmap is for every single tribe in the current game. But I want to make it very clear that if there's anything to take away from this video, it's not how to excel at this meta, it's how to excel at every single meta. So just make sure you understand the reason why a card enables a certain direction and not that it just does. Let's get right into it. Mechs are enabled by Scrap Scraper. Usually you use Elise to try and get more beatboxers and forts, and then you can top your build off with Drukhari and or utility drones. Dragons are enabled by Wealth Smuggler and or Bran. I will never ever commit Caligos without one of these cards. Pirates are enabled by a lot of cards actually. You can go Tethys from a lot of spots when you have any advantage from cycling cards, which can be Bran, Wraith, but you definitely can't commit Pirates if you don't have Tethys. Murlocs are enabled by Bran and Primal Fin. Murlocs are the highest cap board in the game currently, but completely unplayable without Bran. And Murky Murkai are also just unbuyable without Bran, so make sure to pick up that Bran. Elementals are enabled by Genie and or Wraith, and we commit Elementals when you hit Nomi or Rock. Tier 3 Quobor is enabled with Briarback Bookie or Spearhide and committed to with Piper. Tier 6 Quobor is enabled with Piper and committed to with any of the 6 drop Quobors. I know, it's kind of weird, but it's how it is. Slamma Beasts are enabled by Slyraptor and committed to with Slamma. Goldren Beasts, on the other hand, are just enabled when you have any reason to pick up a Goldren, which could be Mechahorse, Titus, or Slamma. Phalanx Menagerie is just enabled by having a board. Yeah, that's kind of why Phalanx is a little too strong right now. Theo, on the other hand, is enabled with double Elise and only double Elise. Consume Demons are enabled by Fellemental, where self-damage demons are enabled by Wrathweaver and Soul Rewinder. Nagas are enabled by Orgazoa, which is probably the reason why Nagas are a little too hard to build right now, and committed to with Lord of Gains or Athissa. Zesty Crooner is enabled by Zesty, and Zesty is semi-enabled by Reef-Riffer because it's kind of hard to pick up Zesty without the Reef-Riffer. And lastly, Undead is enabled with Sore Loser and committed to when you hit Champion of the Primus, or Sister Death Speaker. If this video was useful to you, remember to subscribe and also comment if you think I should do more guides like this one and if you think I should maybe do anything better. Anyways, thanks so much for watching this. Bye.